It's not an SUV, it's not a hardcore 4x4, it's not an MPV, and it's not a van. Or maybe it's all of these things, and that's one of the reasons why I'm fascinated by the Honda Element, a car which is now 20 years old. In this video I'm going to explain to you all the things that I like about it and why I think it's possibly one of the most practical and versatile cars Honda or anybody has ever made. I'm Jonny Smith, welcome to the Late Break Show. What I should have also added in the intro is that I've bought this car. This is one of very few Honda Elements that are in the UK because the UK never sold them. It's almost criminal that we never got them here in the UK. This was a Honda that was not only designed in America, but built in America. I think exclusively built in America, even though this particular car, being right-hand drive, was built in America, sent to Japan, and then someone must have imported it from Japan to here in the UK, so it's travelled a little bit. And there's not many here in Britain. How did this car begin? I'll talk a bit more about the history throughout this piece, but this car was born as a concept in 2001. Detroit Motor Show, it was revealed, and externally it looked almost identical to the production car. It was called the Model X. Yeah, they didn't use that name in final production because if they had, we wouldn't have the Tesla Model X. Instead, the name came about in a completely different way, which I'll explain later. But the purpose of the car was to be really, really utilitarian. This was actually aimed at the surfing community, or young men specifically in their early 20s who were outdoorsy. But it actually sold to people in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, who ultimately just wanted practicality from the garden centre or camping or dogs. Yeah. A lot of dog owners like Elements. The profile is probably my favourite angle on the Element because it really shows what this car was about. Plastic exposed grey rough cladding on all the extremities of the car, round the front, that sort of dark mask. And the reason for that, I guess, is to protect it so that all of the bits which are more likely to get scraped are probably not going to cost you as much money to repair because they're not body colour. However, the doors are not protected, so they're the opposite of the Citroen Cactus. But who cares when the doors are this cool? Because that's one of the party pieces of the Element, no B-pillar. In fact, this car had to be designed extensively to be safe in crash testing because it didn't have this pillar, which is probably explaining the really chunky sills here. It's not a separate body chassis car, remember. The mechanism is in here. It's great. And when you've got those doors open and you've got the split tailgate open, suddenly you go, wow, this car is just a blank canvas. A lot of people use these cars as vans because you can remove the back seats. Or if, like me, you can't be bothered to remove them, you can just hinge them up. So as I said at the top of this feature, this car was designed in the States and made in the States. And I think it really draws inspiration from several things. The early Land Rover Discovery, and also maybe the Matra Rancho, a Talbot Matra Rancho, which was one of the first, if not the first, soft road vehicles. It predates all of this stuff that we now know as being a crossover or a thing like that. But I love that about it. Come round to the front. Come round to the front and you can see again this chunky kind of plastic mask that it's got. The front's not the most attractive. In fact, the front's probably the worst angle for it. It does look quite masky. Headlights, I know this particular car's got a cloudy eye on one side. It's got a bit of a cataract. I've got to polish that. It's got, I think, halogen or xenon headlights. They're really good actually. And a little tiny grille, but not a very long overhang. All Elements came with the same engine. You could order it as a two-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, or a four-wheel drive, which this is, all largely based upon the second generation CR-V. So pretty proven actually, and these are apparently better off-road than most people give them credit for. But they all of them had this. And this is one of the reasons why I was interested in buying it too. Because not only does it look interesting and it's deeply practical, it's hard to kill. Because that is a Honda K24 engine, a 2.4 VTEC double overhead cam motor. So at 152 brake horsepower and 161 pounds-feet of torque, it's not big numbers for a 2.4 litre. It's actually quite a lazy VTEC. Don't expect this to be when the VTEC kicks in, yo, because it ain't that. But what it is exceptionally robust, strong engine. I've found it to be, well, you'd be lucky to get over 30 to the gallon on it, which is probably one of its biggest downfalls. But for the American market, which this was born for, does loads of miles, really cheap to look after, really hard to kill. I can't actually remember how you came about buying an Element. I know you had a VW Caddy and you got rid of that.
That's all right.
You wanted another kind of car that you could do camera filming in, and you got a young family.
No. So what happened was I wanted to buy a T6. Jonny wouldn't let me buy a T6. He says, the car you want is a Honda Element. And I said, I'm never going to be able to find one of those in the UK.
That's right.
So Jonny put out a tweet. 15 minutes later, somebody messaged you back saying,
I know a guy that's got one.
I've got, I think the guy actually got in touch with you and said, I've got a Honda Element.
Yeah.
I'm not too fussed, but if the price is right, I'll sell it.
That's right.
You drove me down there, sort of frog marched me down to London to find this car, and made me buy it.
Well, I knew the guy, it turns out.
That was so random.
From a previous life in VA called VWs. It's not the last word in economy, this.
No.
You needed a car that was more 50 to the gallon, not 30 to the gallon.
Absolutely.
So, and I was an easy target. So guess who bought it?
The thing is, I think Jonny is going to do this car up nicely, then sell it back to me. That's what I'm hoping. And then a few years later, I'll sell it back to him, and we'll just, in perpetuity, keep swapping the car.
I've just noticed those extra, look, those extra tie downs.
Oh yeah.
Wow. I don't think I'm ever going to sell it, because the truth is it's too useful. I've moved so many car parts, house parts, children parts around. It's just ridiculous.
I feel really awkward this side of the camera. Can I go back to that side of the camera, please? And get on with this film.
Go on, Splendor. At the back, you've obviously got the twin tailgate here, and this particular car, I think, has had this portion painted body colour. It's also had twin exhausts added. Don't judge me, I didn't do it. I'll probably be changing the exhaust back to something a little bit more sensible. You've got that Made in USA Eagle badge there, just to remind you that all Elements were made in America, designed in America. And what was interesting actually about that is the Honda brand manager of the time, Charles Schneiber, I think his name was, asked his marketing team to go out and spend several days in bookshops reading and looking at words as to what they should call this car. What was this going to be called? And days went by and they didn't have any luck. And then someone said, oh, why don't we look at the periodic table? Let's look at all the elements in the periodic table. And he went, Element, done, we're done here, boom. And that's why it's called the Honda Element. There were 3 trim levels of Element. The entry level was called the DX, and that was discontinued in 2005. That was a manual gearbox only, steel wheels, no air conditioning. Then you had the EX, which was automatic option. This is an EX, this particular car, and it had alloy wheels. And then you had the SC, which stood for Street Custom, apparently. And I think they had much bigger wheels, limited edition, and some body-coloured parts of the bumpers. In fact, I was going to say, this car lasted until 2007 in this guise, and then they started to facelift it with body-coloured panels and stuff like that, because it wasn't selling so well. But I think the earlier cars, this car, 2003 up to 2007, is the sweet spot. It's the better looking, purer design. You can see that these portions of glass here are tinted and they wrap all the way around. So it's got this really nice kind of like black bar here. It really reminds me again of my Nissan Cube, because although that car was asymmetric, it had that wraparound glass on one of the sides. And a bit, obviously BMW i3 is a car that's currently still just about on sale. It has this pillarless thing, and there are pros and cons to the pillarless, which I will come on to. 16-inch wheels here. These are the original wheels for the early generation of Element. In fact, this is a 2003 car, so this is the first year of production, this particular car, and it's aged really well. I think this design could be 3 or 4 years old. I've had numerous people think that this is a new car or a nearly new car. These wheels have been powder coated black. I don't know whether I like them in black, but they are the original design. 215 70/16 tyres, lots of gap, because this could go ever so slightly off-roady. This particular one is a four-wheel drive, like I say, and there are some people that do the whole Overland thing with Elements, and they raise the ride height of the suspension, they put chunkier tyres and stuff like that. In fact, the whole cult following of Elements is massive. From what I've gathered is the people that bought them when they were new kept hold of them because there was no other car that did what this did better. In fact, standing here today in 2023, having tested numerous different cars, I test a new car at least once a week. How many cars are more useful than this? I'm going to go as far as to say if you've got a Land Rover Discovery, aside from the fact that it tows 3.5 tons, what does it do better than this? It's not more reliable. It's certainly not more reliable. Here comes the practicality. So you've got one regular tailgate, but then you've got the drop down, aka the picnicking area. And you know, on other cars like Land Rover Discoveries and full-size Range Rovers, this is what so many people buy them for. Yet the Element has it. And because of this boxy back, it's got a huge amount of boot space. Nice, completely flat entry point with stowage either side, here, and numerous tie downs. The thing I love about this, because I've owned in the past Nissan Cubes, and the Nissan Cube again is a boxy shape, so it's massively practical boot area. And having owned the Jimny in a previous life, again really boxy back end, no storage, but it's that shape. You can put so much in here. In fact, if I can find the footage, I have put a chest freezer, a full-size chest freezer in the back of here, not to mention many other things. Bicycles, for example. You can put bicycles in without having to drop the handlebars or the seat or anything. Another Element-only feature. This sort of hard plastic boot floor has another feature. Flip it on its back and you can actually locate on here 4 legs. They were optional. You could get table legs, and this was your takeaway camping table, and that hole in the middle is for a parasol. Now, these chairs here, they've got these, they're not orange on the original car, previous owner put the oranges, but they've got these elasticated cross bungees. I use them for my shopping bags and stuff like that, stop it from rattling around. Again, just every single corner you look in this car, there's some useful, versatile space. We even use it for filming when we're doing tracking on the Late Break Show, because when you put that up, you can film out of there with the camera operator locked down by the tie downs. Really, really useful. I'll show you the chairs, the trick of the chairs. Really, the Element is all about the choices and versatility that you get inside here. First of all, it's a rubber matted car. I'm not going to tell you that you can hose it out like you can an old Range Rover, because there's no drain holes, and frankly it will probably go mouldy. But what you can do is you can obviously wipe it out, and it's easy to vacuum. It's like a sort of Lego brick kind of grippy surface, like the sort of thing you get on like a hospital floor. But it's not a bad thing, and this particular car came with optional overmats, which I'll show you now. You can Velcro and hook them in really easily and shake them out. So if you're going to the beach, or you're going on a walk, or you've got dogs, it's dead simple. It looks like it's a 4-seater, and it wasn't until about a fortnight ago that I realised it's a 5-seater. You do actually have a lap belt. The person in the middle sits between on the seam of the seats. When I say the seam, it's because the rear seats can actually hinge up. The Element was designed to have a seat fabric that, although it doesn't look particularly interesting, it's water repellent. Again, probably something that's suitable for the outdoorsy life, beach life, something like that. You can put the seat down and you can fold it flat. And you can take the headrest off because, there we go, because the seat at the back can be moved with that loop there. I'm going to shimmy round. So the back seats can adjust to and fro. You pull this cord here and these can go to and fro, so you can decide how much boot space you want or don't want. And now that I've put that down, the Element was designed to become a makeshift double bed, so you can put all 4 seats down to create a relatively flat temporary bed, because it's all about camping. A lot of tents could attach onto the tailgate as well. And there's a power takeoff in the boot, actually. There's a cigarette lighter in the boot area. Completely flat floor car as well, no transmission tunnel. There's a bit of a flimsy 4 cup holders here by the handbrake, which is notoriously a bit shallow, which can tip your drinks out. And this particular car does have an optional armrest, which I found the instruction manual for. But here you've got 3 pull loops. Like I say, you've got this pull loop here, which moves the seat to and fro, like that. This pull loop here, which quickly lifts the back up and down. And then, and I'll do this one, you might have spotted a pull loop down here, a yellow one. Pull that, and then the seat hinges up, a bit like a Land Rover, and there's a carabiner, and you attach it to the roof rail. So you can either drive around with both seats like this, or just one hinged up that you can put stuff or bicycles in, and then you've got yourself an enormous amount of space. So with these up carabined onto the handles, your load space has got these bars here, which you can lash stuff onto, like motorbikes, bicycles, fridges, whatever. You've got extra lash downs there, those bars there, there's a power takeoff, and then you've got these door bins, like I said before. Some cars have an optional rear sunroof, so the theory is while you're lying down in your makeshift bed, you can see the stars. There is no sunroof there though. It's a bit weird. This particular version at some point has had an aftermarket TV and DVD system put in the ceiling. That didn't come as standard. One of the options you could get officially from Honda was like a dog kennel home and a ramp for a dog. I'll find a picture, it's in a brochure somewhere. As cool as the suicide door setup is, there are 2 minor drawbacks. One, I don't mind it. You have a pop-out window instead of a wind-down at the back. It's actually really good to have as a bit of ventilation while you're driving along, but it can annoy people in the back who want to just wind the window down. Secondly, if I've got the belt on and someone in the back wants to get out, Houston, the car's actually made in Ohio, we have a problem. The person in the back can't get out. You have to take your belt off, which can be a bit of a pain in the arse. But no car is perfect. I've tested hundreds of them. The good outweighs the bad with all of that diversity and space back there. So what's it like to drive an Element? Well, it's a firmer ride than I was expecting it to be, considering it's a predominantly an American market car. I thought it'd be a bit more lollopy. It's not, it's actually a bit more taut, which pleases me. It corners surprisingly well, but then it doesn't actually weigh that much. Depending on the 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive version, between 1,500 and 1,650 kilos, which is not too bad. This being the automatic and this being pre-2007 means it's a 4-speed auto. It feels really quick off the line actually, and quite sensitive. to react. It's not a slushy auto box at all, which I like, but you do notice on the motorway, well, I'll do it now, when you get up to about kind of motorway speed, you will notice it'll be revving fairly high, 2,700, just below 70 miles an hour. So that probably doesn't help the economy, and this being the four-wheel drive probably doesn't help its economy. But then you look at it for what it is, and what it is, certainly when I get feedback from people that have owned them over the years, a lot of Americans, like I said, they adore them. These cars are really robust. They're quite simple, they're friendly, and they're hard to kill. They're also really comfortable. I like the driving position actually, and these sort of like water repellent seats are supportive. A couple of jobs on my particular car that I need to do is mostly tightening up some things that have just got strangely loose. The gear shifter's got loose, this armrest has gone a bit floppy, the seat's clunking a bit, so I need to go through it. But this car has done what, 185,000 kilometres, not a great deal, but it's been used a lot. And it hasn't been garaged. Yeah, I quite like the response from the Autobox slowdown. So after 2007, they put a 5-speed auto in it, but that's when they refreshed and sort of facelifted it anyway. So these models either get the manual or this 4-speed auto. And I love the fact that the auto shifter's up here right on the dash, just like the Civic of the era, the EP3, like the Type R EP3, which is cool. It gives you that much more cabin space. Here's a thought, imagine if this was electric. Oh my gosh. If this thing was EV, it would just be it would tick so many boxes for me. Another couple of jobs I've got to, you can probably hear chafing. There's a chafe from the front left and a clonk from the front right. And I believe drop links on these and anti-roll bar bushes are notoriously weak. So they need doing on my car. And also the brakes, it is quite hungry for brakes, but the good news is you can easily get them. EBC, who sponsor proudly our Burnout motorbike playlist, they supply discs and pads for these off the shelf, no problem. And if you're a Late Brake Show viewer, which I presume you are, you can get a discount, 15% discount off all EBC products. There's a discount code in the description below. Because it's on 70 profile tyres, quite small wheels, 16s, that helps the ride quality, no doubt. The previous owner, before videographer Matty, had it on bigger wheels. I think he had on 18s with low profile tyres, and he actually lowered the suspension. But it looked awful and it handled well, but it was too stiff. So we undid all that, or Matty undid all of that. The steering's quicker. So not only is the suspension a little firmer than you expect it to be, but the steering's a little bit quicker and more direct. Again, I like that. You're sitting up high in that kind of van-like position, but the car feels very car-like, because it is a car. It's a CRV with, you know, a Postman Pat body on it. Of course, if you follow me on this channel, you'll know that that's not my only Honda that I use on a regular basis. This is my other Honda, which is a different beast entirely to the Insight, to the Element. The Insight is the 320,000 mile car that I've owned twice. And the reason why it's covered in dirt is because I use it a lot. If you want to know more about this car and you don't already, I'll put a link above my head and I'll tell you about it, but there's some mods, hypermiling mods to come on this project, so stay tuned, as they used to say on television. So there it is, the Honda Element, the car that came out 20 years ago, but yet still bears so many useful features, such an incredible piece of design, I believe. Name me a car that does all of that in that size package with that level of reliability for that kind of money. Let me know in the comments, or maybe you're a proud owner of an Element already. Let me know why you like it so much. If you want to know more about my other project cars as well as this, and there'll be more updates on this to come, I'll put a link on screen somewhere so you can look at my other vehicles. Thanks for watching this episode of The Late Break Show. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. Maybe you want to support us via Patreon, and I'll put a link for that in the description below. You typically get access to videos like this early. Thank you.